Well, today is April 20th, 2022. Spring has sprung. I'm sitting in Nick's penthouse right now.
Top of the world.
Yeah. Sitting here with Bishop Hill Farms. First time actually officially meeting you. We met at a farm gathering or event, I guess it was. But it was just kind of in passing intro, not knowing. But what was interesting is that that was my first time meeting you. But then, like, since then, everybody that I've spoken to about flowers or even discussing that flora era or area, your name always came up, and I wasn't putting two and two together
That was me.
that was you. Yeah. And so then I was chatting, then I got to know Sky Hill Farm, Sky Flower. And then she brought your name up again. So all of this was like, coming to a head. And then I'm like, oh, I said, I really, wanted to meet you. So it's pretty awesome that we get to sit here and chat and officially meet. And yeah.
And I got to go out to your farm yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't there. It would have been good to give you the tour. Hopefully it was done well. But what do you think?
First of all, you tell me what you think about your farm, and I'll think.
Apparently, I'm hard on myself on that, but I like where it's going. And as I was just sharing a little bit ago, the vision, a year ago, the vision that I felt like I was just, given to be able to see that now to where it's at is truly remarkable. So like, I feel a lot more confident right now than I did last year, even though I was excited because of the vision. I wasn't confident in it. And now to see a lot of that coming and unfold is still there, or to see that unfold, I'm more, I have a positive outlook on it now more than I did last year, I guess. But I don't think that we're quite there yet. I'm pretty hard on myself. I know in certain areas, and this is just, I want the next thing. I don't like to be messy. I don't like weeds. I don't like, I feel too disorganized, and that is the most difficult thing for me to get over. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to not have that problem, because if I just ignore it, it's going to go by, and that means I'm just going to be completely disorganized. And then I won't keep striving for that. So I'd rather have the problem of feeling the burden of being disorganized and not there, than saying, I don't care, it's fine.
Right. Well, I didn't see that. I've been to many farms, probably over 200 farms. We did a lot of farm visits at the Cup Hill Farmers Market. Then I went to the Dallas Farmers Market, and then I went further out because we had a further mile radius. And so I'll just take it back to when I grew up in Wyoming, and you could drive for miles and miles.
Mhm.
And so farms were not one on top of the other. So as a kid, I would always like, why is it that some farms are just like trash everywhere, and nothing happens on that land, and then others just are like, they've got the circular irrigation, so what is it about people and personalities that make farms different? And so then when I became going to a lot of farms, I realized that people's personality is part of their farm, and it shows. So now going back to your farm yesterday, we were only there for, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes. But of course, I wanted to walk to that lettuce field on beyond, because I don't have hoop houses. I'm like, oh, hoop houses, but when we walked around the corner and then saw all of your the fields where you also had the strings ready for, was that cucumbers out in the field, and then your lettuce field over to the left.
Yeah.
It was just like, I took a picture. It was covered with trees, and 2 years, and I'm like, it's a bigger farm than a lot of the market gardening type farms that I go to, small farms. But in a way, it was like a high production farm. So the thing I kept saying, and I was even saying it when I was on the phone with other people last night, is where what you're creating has a lot of potential to have more than. Is there a market for that here in your vision? Because your production is going to go out of the. I mean, with all the berries, the orchard.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I see the future problems is how in the world am I going to do all of that? Because like you said, the
Harvest,
berries now and so
process.
because like and they always say, the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. So we were planning on planting like our trees and all this stuff that's going to take a few years to produce, day one, but we couldn't because of all the tree, we had to do so much clearing and all that. So the fact that we still expedited that, we're going on year three now and got that in this winter buys me a year to figure out how I'm going to manage it because those trees are
Hmm.
just going to sit there and grow and I don't have to do too much. We did initial pruning and the same thing with the berries. I mean, like I have to figure out how to trellis all that. Like all of that is brand new stuff. And so all I really have to do though this year is just keep it alive.
Keep it,
I
yeah.
just got to water it. And so we got the irrigation mostly in. But yeah, that's going to be the next problem. But it was like that was the worst consequence or the better consequence was just get it in, keep it alive until we figure out how we're going to manage that, because that's going to need more people
Hmm.
on there. So yeah, it's, that's hopefully next year's problem. But I'm going to be thinking about it and processing. At least that'll give me some time to figure that out and put some strategies in place.
Well, and obviously, it looks like you've put a lot into your infrastructure and continue to do that, and doing it in a way that, your irrigation setup. I know some farmers are still hand watering.
Mm.
It's like, well, that way I can walk through my fields and see what's all there. But you've got your irrigation, you've got the weed, and the landscape fabric
Mm-hmm.
to control that, so you're not always out there hoeing and
Right.
going through the fields that way. So, um, is that what you've been doing? Is putting a lot into the infrastructure to build this farm so quickly?
Yeah, that's been the main thing. And in the first year, and it's people are probably gonna get tired of hearing this, but I literally thought so. We bought a used greenhouse the first time from a nursery, and I remember still that after I said I just need to buy the shade cloth, and that's the last thing I need to buy, and that's when I ran into Nick. So there's this funny story with that, but it's such a demarcation in my life of farming because I look at that and that was thousands and thousands of dollars ago, but I started seeing the writing on the wall for like, oh, this is actually very doable. And like I said, around that time is when I got the fuller vision of like what we're now in the midst of building out. And so on top of that, I started reading some other books and they were saying the same thing, like your first 3 years are all just investment. And
Hmm.
I've had some business experience, so I know that all businesses. I mean, it takes 5 years, and so you've got to be committed for 5 years.
Putting
This
it
is
back
a
in.
long term play, and so I'm committed to doing that, and I know that years 2 and 3 are going to be my heaviest investment years on that. Year two is probably the heaviest out of those two, and so it was really really hard to do that. But starting to see the fruit, so to speak, no pun intended or pun intended, I guess it would be of that. But now that where we're at, it's like I still feel just as far behind as I was last year as I am now because now the demand, people are catching a hold of our vision. They're supporting us. They're saying, they're providing the feedback that we need to continue to invest into it. So, like I said, I feel just as far behind today as I did last year, even though we're 5 miles ahead of where we were last year. So it again, good problem, but same, stress hasn't changed. So that's never good. Right. It's not going
Mm.
to go away. Yeah. I hope it doesn't because that's what we were saying before too. It's like that's a little bit of that back pressure that it's what continues to propel you forward and to keep focused, on it. So
So
yeah.
when you're talking about the feedback that you're getting, where are you getting that feedback from, and what does that look like?
Yeah. A lot of it is just the farmers market our customers, but then also our restaurant or our other customers, the restaurants, and just the demand. So now we've had we had one small little store in Cooper that asked to have our produce there, and now we have two other ones that are supposed to be having our produce starting in the next 1 to 2 months. So that on top of just not every week we typically run out of produce, and so I don't like to say no, but we're likely going to have to start saying no to, maybe some of these other, areas that we wanted to start pursuing. And so it's just, it's a good problem to have, but it's just not, you know, when you think you're going to go on a farm and you think, oh, I just got to grow food. Oh, I can't wait to get my hands dirty. And it's
No.
a kind of a side joke, but my wife's been working the farm more than me. And so we were out the other night on a date chatting with some friends, and I looked down. I said, "That is so bizarre. Your fingers are rougher than mine." And my
What
wife,
is going?
yeah,
This is why I have black fingernails.
yeah,
Nobody knows how dirty they really are.
that's a brilliant idea. Maybe I could go gothic. That would
Yeah.
look good on me. Yeah.
That's why I do it, because I'm handling flowers in a way that and I always wrap the bouquets and put bouquets together, and so I'm like they don't want to see those dirty old fingers that are, but I do have all the cracks that.
Yeah, all those cracks though, and dirt in them. I'm looking at mine right now. It's a war wound. It's good. It's good to see that.
Yeah.
But it's just funny when I shook my wife's hand that night and we were looking. I'm like, yeah, that's and I'm an outdoorsy guy, so my hands are not smooth to begin with.
There hers were.
So she probably doesn't want me airing you know her calloused hands on air, but love you, babe. uh, so back to the managing the tree in the upcoming stuff, and also just our continued expansion. I thought that I could just do this on my own. It would just be me and my wife could continue just doing homeschool. And of course, we've outgrown that. And so we have a few people on there. But what I don't know is I don't know what I should have. Like in the farm, you on the farm, you never ever feel like you've got everything done. You're never done. And so you have to put those boundaries in place. But what I don't know where I should be. Like how many people should it take to run an operation, maybe where we're at, or even somebody that's a little larger. So that I do have that question on what you've seen out there. If you've seen, I mean, how are like so we're let's just say we're an acre and a half. I mean, do you see is this still like a mom and pop at most places? I know like Frith Farm they've got a full staff, and a lot of these people use interns and things, but I don't really know
Mm.
how that works. Are they only there for a month? So I don't know how these other operations deal with external support and labor. Do you have any?
Well, it's first of all, it's pretty hard to find the people
Yeah.
that want to work on a farm, and those who want to be farmers themselves. So
Mm,
they get a little experience and then they move on. Um, I know that Bolden Farm down out of Austin, he has a similar setup, and he has a lot of the woofers. They're pretty transient youth that take on, and you house them somewhere. Or they house
mm,
close by, and they're just like they're moving around the country, but they have a lot of farm experience from other farms, so they may bring ideas
mm,
or skills that you didn't. That may have pruned all those or peach orchards. So I think he taps into that type of labor force, and he likes the energetic piece of the youth, um, because they're motivated. They're wanting to be in that farm community
right.
feel. Um, a lot of farms I know hire women because they're home, or they're then they can do part time,
Mm,
and then a lot have specific jobs at the farm. The processing, like I come out on the processing day. We're washing all the carrots, we're putting them in bundles, getting ready for market, because you need extra help at that point,
mm,
versus every day, like whatever that would be.
right.
And so I was thinking about the berries, and you trellising all those berries.
Yeah, there will be.
There will be somebody who has done berry trellising that could be hired just for a specific job to
Right.
do that. And then it wouldn't, because it's hard for farms to go year round and have somebody work year round,
Right. Yeah.
and so it's very seasonal. So
It's all over.
and
Yeah.
my flower farm is me starting it saying I want to be the only one, because I have done so much with a lot of volunteers
Yeah.
and a lot of people a lot of personalities. And for me, at my point in life, I would just feel like I like to just do what I
Yeah.
do. And occasionally, I have a florist that wants to work on a flower farm and come out for a few hours, or someone who wants to start a farm, they'll come out and it's just a few hours. But I always find that um, takes more of my time
Yeah.
because they're wanting to learn from
Right.
me, and it's like, we're just going to get over here and we're going to take care of all of this, and we're going to put all these stakes in, and they're like, doesn't work. I'm not coming
Right.
back. Because there's really not a hiring place for
Yeah, right.
farms that you would go to. But it could, some of the farms that Nick and I know, they pull from the restaurant industry because they're interested in
Sure.
farms and they want to be a part of the
Right.
that farming world, just like florists want to be a part of the flower farming world. And they're actually thinking, maybe someday I'll grow my own.
Right.
Chefs are thinking, I'm going to put in a little garden because they think they can be their own
Right.
farm supply, but they really can't. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. They get
They're
into that.
dabbling
Yeah.
there.
It's like, yeah.
I will do microgreens in the kitchen, but
Right. Yep.
it didn't work.
It's interesting. So what you said, it just reminded me of a kind of a concept or theory. But my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they own Blueview Greenhouse up in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. Incredible operation they have. Kind of started a single greenhouse and all that. But we were chatting. We chat periodically, just because we're not in the same world, but still deal with the same material and
Hmm.
industry stuff. And so we were chatting about labor, and I asked him, because he just brings in, like, our nephews and nieces will come work for him, and
Family.
yeah, they do. Mom and dad will stop up and help them during the peak season, which for them is like right now. And I asked him, like, where are you going to stop? At what point? And he says, we don't want anybody else. Like, and they're not saying that negatively. They just want it to be a family run thing. Like, they want to enjoy that fullness of it. They see the outputs of what commercializing this to the fullest extent would do to them, and they don't want that. They're very conservative. They like where they are, and it's got me thinking. At the same time, I was watching some other YouTube videos at this time about some market gardeners, and they took off, and they ended up being. I mean, they had fully automated everything in their system to the point where they were just doing office work all day long, and then they sold it. And I'm like, and
Don't
so
want
that
to
hit
go
me.
there.
Yeah, that hit me at the same time. It's like, you have to define what you want. Are you just going at it, just hey, you knee jerk reaction, get out of corporate America. I just need to get my hands dirty. Are you wanting to build a business to sell? Are you wanting to just do this as a family? And that's one question I never asked myself fully. Like, where do I want to take this? And now we're struggling with that. Like, do we want just to have it just be us, our family? Like our family business, which we've kind of already outgrown that because we have some dedicated laborers. But it is something that I think people have to be mindful of. Like, where do you want this to be? Do you just want this to be you and your time of peace and habit
Hmm.
and your or habitation, or do you want to grow this thing to where all you're doing is sitting back writing checks? Because that's literally, especially in the growing stage where I'm at, the building out. That's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm just writing checks,
Right.
and writing checks and telling people what to do. I don't get to actually do what I set out to do, but I'm enjoying it because I see it as a stopgap until I can join the crew full time and do be part of that. But it's, again, it has to be something that you've got to realize, where do you want this thing to go? Do you want to get it fully automated where you're not doing anything, and it's just an investment, you're going to sell it, or is this, hey, I just want this intimate time and this is what I want to do the rest of my life type of thing. So
Yeah, and then when I started my farm, I knew where I was going with that,
mm,
because I knew I didn't want to work myself out of getting my hands dirty and sitting at a computer all the
yeah,
time and being on the phone, and so because I've done that, and I'm like I want to be the one who is out there and I'm seeing every plant and my shadows on the plants. That's what I wanted, and I also wanted to create a model for what a flower farm looks like
mm,
so that I could teach others. I'm an educator, so I'm like, I will teach others from this model because I felt like there's a gap in the flower farming in North Texas. So that was, so right from the get go, I know where I'm going. I
mm,
still know where I'm going. Um, but at some point, I mean, I put in more rows and more rows, and it's like can I do this all myself? I'm just really pushing that, and I'm older.
Yeah.
So I don't. I would say that in talking to you just a few minutes before we started this, that you have ability to put together systems, so
Mhm.
your labor force will be better and more efficient because of the systems that you put in. Because there's a lot of farms that are just so unorganized that people spend most of their time waiting around to be told what to do,
Yeah.
and a lot of them use that chalkboard method, on a shed wall that the rain's gone, down it, and then they don't keep it up, and so you spend a lot of time, employee time that you're paying for,
Mhm.
not having the work
Right.
done.
Yep.
So I think you've already got that piece of
Mhm.
the putting systems to where you're communicating everybody on their phone. Here's the priorities for the day, and the most efficient farms I saw came out of University of Southern California, out at do you know that of course I can't remember the name of it, but every community garden, every farm I went to out around San Francisco, all had the same method, and they all came out of that. It was agronomy school
Mhm.
with the University of Southern California, and that method spawned a lot of farms that were
Mhm.
really efficient, and so it's like it was taught.
Yeah.
So look into that too.
Sure.
I think agronomy. I want to say it's like how to
Sounds
put.
cool.
Yeah, that's a nice word, isn't
Economy.
it? It's like economy and
Yeah.
agri economy, but
Okay. Well, and the other thing on the labor side of it is, if I've noticed that if you can find the people that are passionate about it, it is unbelievable the difference. Gage is our main worker, and he loves plants. And I still remember, because we donated some plants to the homeschool association um, event they had, their annual, and
mhm.
and he was in there bidding on our plants. And this is about a year and a half, or no, yeah, maybe a year and a half ago. And so he was just so big eyed and smiling when he won, what we had donated up there at a silent auction. And then, like 3, 4 months later, just out of the blue, his mom contacted my wife and said, "Hey, do you have any?" And I'm like, "We can't afford something like that." And
Yeah,
now I look back at that, and if I would have said we can't afford that and said no, I
you would
would
have
I
missed
would
him.
not be where I'm at now, because when you have the right people doing, he's passionate about it, he's eager to learn and wants to learn the process and do all this. It's completely different, because I've had another guy that was just there, and he's just there for a paycheck, or was just there for a paycheck, and it's the magnitude of that is beyond. Like, I would, entrust somebody who's passionate about what we're doing. Like, I could just leave and know that he's got it. Plants are going to
Mhm.
get watered. It's not going to be to my level of perfection that I want, but he's going to keep stuff alive, and he's going to do, all the things, because he's in it. He's understands it, and so that's the big game changer to me. Like, and I've seen a lot. I have other employees too in the IT world, and it's the same thing. But I never saw it so unfold so beautifully until
At
now.
that farm.
Like, when you see somebody who's passionate about that kind of work and what you can do and entrust them, it's like it's a game changer when you can find the right people.
Well, I will say that farming and working with plants is It's transforming,
Mm,
and you will see a lot more passions in that, because there's something about plants that pull humans in, and growth unform. Like a seed to you can see that seed make that first zucchini every year, like 30 years ago, and today it's still like, did you
mm,
see that? And
yep.
made that little zucchini. So I think that's the kind of person that you're looking for, that is
Hmm.
actually like mesmerized by plants and the
Hmm.
growth process, because it validates the reality. Now, I don't, you work in the tech world, but to me, farming is definitely part of this world,
Oh yeah.
reality, nature.
Hmm.
And so I always kind of play off of that if I'm watching people who come out. because people want to come out and work, and we'll do a couple hours, and I will know within an hour if they're the
Mm-hmm.
ones that would stick with it.
Yep, that's very true. Yeah, yeah. To have that aha moment when you see that sprout come out, and if that tickles your fancy, it's like, all right, yep,
Yeah, because
yeah,
you'll work that greenhouse, and these are
yeah.
your babies. Won't leave them out for whatever.
Keep pointing fingers up.
I'm sorry. You came in the front door.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, would you ever go into flowers?
It was just funny you say that. We're trying to do flowers, and my wife is scared of failure. So she, like, if she can't get something right the first time, she assumes like it's not in her DNA, and God does not want her doing that, like to
Mm,
that level. And it doesn't matter what the topic is. And so and I'm the extreme opposite. Like it's not failure. It's just like learning how,
learn.
like I know, like if I know the vision, I'd see where I'm going. I know that it's gonna take me 10 times as long because I'm gonna make 10 times as many mistakes to get to where I need to be because I don't know what I'm doing. And so she has the opposite. So and we pair up well together in that area. But all that being said is this flower part here is something she tapped around with a little, or tap danced around last year, and and we did all right, but we just did like the bare minimum, was like the easy thing, like zinnias and amaranth. And
Hmm.
so now it's something that she's very interested in doing, but she's so scared of failure. So it's like we don't really know where to start apart from just doing it. Like putting seeds
Right.
up, but we don't even know. Like I don't know, and she probably knows more on the flower side, but I don't know like what's what should we plant.
Well, and so this is where I really have a sticking point with farms that want to go into flowers,
Mhm.
that they go, well, it's my wife's thing. And when they come to market, they don't take care of them because it's my wife's thing. She didn't get them ready for me to come to market.
Mhm.
But incorporating them into as another crop, and you're just growing
Yeah.
another crop, and you don't have to bundle it in a way that is artistic, but you just have to know how you process it when you
Yeah.
cut it out of the field. And it's the same as putting together your celery, which looked great. I mean, you could actually just sell celery as a green and
Yeah.
throw some flowers in it. So there's that thought that that's women's business, or
Mhm.
that's and that just like
Well,
um
you nailed it on the head because I caught myself saying that earlier this year, and I repented to myself. I should
oh
have probably told her
uh
this too, but
oh.
well, because Engage has a passion for flowers too, and so those two are. But to me, it's like okay, they're not priority because I know what we need to bring in for the income to pay for the bills right now, and so
Yeah.
flowers right now we don't necessarily have a business for them, but we didn't have a business for lettuce a year ago, so it's like I
Hmm.
understand that there's an investment process in that, but I caught myself earlier this year or spring, not like looking at the trays, or we got some new 72 cell trays from Bootstrap Farmer, and they were like the seeds were like half dead, and I just kind of watered them and didn't do anything else. But if it was I realized at that moment after I walked away
They're
from that, I'm
seeds.
like, what if that was lettuce? I would have got a little more involved, but it was kind of like I did this. And
Yeah.
so I had a moment, all that being said, is I had a moment where I caught myself like doing what you just said. Oh, it's my wife's side. I'm like, well, she's doing all this for my side,
Yeah, there's
And,
no shouldn't be sides here.
no.
So really, I did a thing with the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners at the conference, and I did a presentation on how to incorporate flowers into a, small scale produce farm.
Mm,
And everybody sitting there were farmers, and basically, I was just um, talking about the benefits of having them there, and to having them to attract pollinators would be the number one thing. But on the other side, it diversifies your market, and flowers are to attract your attention. I mean, that's how they bring in pollinators.
mhm.
There's something about it that catches people's eyes. So you put flowers on your produce table, and people who've never come to buy produce are like, "Look at those flowers. Let's go over there." And while they're there, then they're seeing what else you have in a different way, because they're attracted to beauty
Right.
more than these are things that keep me healthy or food. And I had a hard time in the very beginning because I was all about food and
Mhm.
growing food for people and hunger and so the first flower workshop I went to, I sat next to these girls from California and I just turned to them and I was like, "How can you grow flowers when food is so important?"
Mm.
And they just like "Ugh." I'm like, "Oh yeah, from California," but what they said to me was people need flowers and flowers are food for the soul.
Mm.
And at that point, I was like, me growing flowers is something that is needed in society. And it's not that I'm keeping people from having food by growing flowers. So that's kind of my thought on why you would want to
Mhm.
incorporate flowers. Um, and I've seen Bolden do this down by Austin, and he's taken them to market, and he's really kind of gotten into not that it's going to take over,
Yeah.
but and it doesn't take much to sell flowers. Flowers sell on their own, and when you're talking square footage and what you're getting for price, flowers are the better deal.
That was gonna be my question then is, and maybe it's some sort of subconscious fear of mine that, you know, that it takes my foot off the gas pedal right now of where I'm so focused on building the farm for produce. I'm afraid to pivot because my focus is going to go that way because just it's my personality. I see it. If it starts
Yeah,
taking
yep,
off, I'm going to
I
start
get
pouring
it.
all my energy in there. So my question though is, I mean, how I don't know how they're doing it, but is that a threat or is it? Do we, how would you counsel that? And that's partially why I said that's my wife's deal because she,
It
you
keeps
know,
your
I
focus over
yeah,
here.
yeah. So, I mean, any words of wisdom or experience even on that? Like how, I mean, or how are people balancing that? I mean, it's not like you're going to have 50% revenue of this and 50% of that. I mean, is it, or is it, or is it? I mean, is there
That's a
a?
good question because I have never really talked to Ben down there of how he's looking at it.
Yeah,
But I know he's getting into it, but not over into it.
right.
Um, because all the other flower farmers I know are pretty much flower farmers. Maxwell Creek is over coming into Dallas to the East Dallas market, and she was flower farmer and then went produce. So she did
Oh,
the opposite.
okay.
And this year they expanded, and she's looking like her CSA and everything's more produce. So
Right,
I've seen that in the past, flower farmers go into produce. So
right. Hmm.
how's the balance? I don't know.
I don't know why. I mean, it's just the markets are different, meaning, I would sell to a flower shop versus a restaurant, and so it's like that's the only thing because at the end of the day, the work on the farm is nearly identical. Prepping the beds, sowing the seeds,
Absolutely.
transplanting, harvesting, storage, all of that is the same. So really the conflict just becomes your market. And so I don't know.
I think it could be combined though. There are chefs and restaurants that want to put flowers on the
Right.
table or edible flowers or I wouldn't go into the floral industry like selling to florists or that's a whole nother ball game.
Right.
And that does take a lot of focus. But if you're going to market anyway to have
Direct
yeah,
direct
direct
consumer,
to
direct to the consumers,
and
right?
if you ever think about having like a farm stand or people
Hmm.
coming and buying or a CSA, add on a
Right.
bouquet of flowers
Okay.
this week. I'll add
Sure.
on a bouquet of flowers this week. The thing that you'd have to do is have a different cooler because the ethylene and the ripening of like your tomatoes
Hmm.
couldn't be in the same as where the flowers are. It
Really.
it really degrades flowers to be in fruit and vegetable coolers.
Hmm.
So
That's news to me.
that's another piece of that.
Same temperature though, because that's one
Uh-huh.
question we've had is like
Yeah.
storage, and we
42. But summer flowers don't have to be in a cooler at all. If you're cutting 2 3 days ahead, just keep them in air conditioning,
okay
70
climate
degrees,
control.
because they're out there in 104 degrees. And once
Yeah.
you cut them in water, they're sitting in water, so they
Right.
can handle 72 degrees.
Right. Okay. Hmm.
Like an air conditioned 80-degree. I mean, my house is 80 degrees if I would keep them in my house. Um, because if you cool them and then take them to a market for 4 hours sitting in a bucket, that
It's
would
gonna
be
shut.
harder on a summer
Mm,
flower than now. The flowers I have coming off right now are cool season flowers, and they need a cooler because your house is warmer or your sheds are warmer. So they need a 42 degree. And they can even I've even seen some of them have crystals in the water and still be fine
Wow.
because they're cool season flowers.
Yeah.
So I use my coolers for those flowers. In the summer, I never use a cooler.
Hmm.
So maybe you just start with
Interesting.
summer flowers,
Right.
which are when your market's the highest anyway.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know that there was even such a thing as cool flowers or summer flowers, but I guess it
Oh,
kind of makes
well.
sense. I just where does
I
the
know
guy go
someone
to like some
can
of
help
that?
you.
And they
Yeah.
follow the landscape. You go to restaurants and stuff, you're gonna see the color change outs throughout the
Mm.
years because we're getting out of summer around pansies jumping back.
Right.
Kale.
Yeah, I guess.
But then there's this
Same
whole
with your
thing-
cool and warm season vegetables.
Right. Yeah.
Celosia is going to be when okra is because it's a lot alike.
Right. Yeah. Hibiscus. It's a hibiscus plant.
Eh.
That's what I thought. Okra is a cousin of hibiscus,
Mhm.
I thought, isn't it? Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Look at the flower.
Yeah, that's what caught our attention. We did these the burgundy okra, and I didn't even want to sell. I just wanted to keep I wanted to cut the bud off and not let it go. It's so beautiful. I'm like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was remarkable that first year.
But I
did it.
throw a lot of vegetable and herbs into bouquets. And everybody loves that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And my blackberries, when they're just turning a little bit red, they're green to a little bit red. I use blackberries because nothing like a bouquet with a little thing of blackberries hanging off the
So
side.
you like just pinch a branch,
Yeah, just
thornless,
cut the
hopefully.
branch. Yeah, I do thornless. Yes. Well, roses have
Yeah,
thorns,
I
and that's
guess, yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
favorite. I won't deal with those.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we got off on flowers there,
Yeah.
Nick.
Well, the timing is good. Just like I say, because we've really had that desire and interest, but it's just
I'm not trying to
not
talk into anything, but
No, we need it.
But it helps you also, like you were saying, you need to have, where you're going and what that vision is and have that in your core as you
Mhm.
make the decisions, because every decision is going to go back on that,
Right.
like keep you from looking at the shiny objects.
Yeah.
Like, so when I was out there and I'm noticing that, you've got your propagation house that you probably started with, and then you've put up 2 other hoop houses, that they were all lined up, and there's some thought about how it's expanding from there and where the fields are going. And you had a blank slate, so
Right.
you could plan that out. But how long would it been like? You didn't just go out there and put all that in and make mistakes. It seems like you had researched that out and got educated. How long before you actually started putting any infrastructure in? And where did you go to find that?
Yeah. Some of it actually is happenstance or providence. I still marvel at how some of it has all laid out. Because I may have been on this earth for 44 years and picked up a few tricks here and there, but how it's come out, especially from an aerial, like when I see it from the drone, it's like
Whoa.
that is beyond me. Like, and so that's where I stand back and I even get the chills right now just thinking about, how it's all unfolded. But the first greenhouse, I've got a video of me. It was just me out there by myself, and it was a day just like today, overcast, and I've got it on the delayed timer thing, whatever that's called, in video. And so now I can go watch. I stood up a greenhouse in like 3 minutes, or at least the hoops, and I had a company come out and just kind of help after the trees. We cleared the trees. I had them just level out somewhat of a area for that first greenhouse. Mind you, there was trees everywhere else around it, and I brought in 1 load of rock just so I could get to it by foot, which is now the long driveway that goes all the way back to the other greenhouses. And so that was the very first instantiation of that. In the vision then was completely different now, and so I just thought that's what I needed, and this will get me by for our plans. But that started from just researching of what does it take to start a market garden, and even before that it was homesteading, so it kind of pivoted from homesteading to market gardening, and this was that first piece of infrastructure that said, okay, I'm going to be a market gardener, even though I had no idea what I was getting into at that time. But I went tool happy from there. So I got that first thing and started realizing like, oh, I don't just need a greenhouse. And so I failed on some of my research. So I'm watching YouTube videos, a lot of the big names out there. And I'd like, oh, ventilation, oh, shade. And a lot of it I didn't realize until it was a
You
problem.
were
Like I
there.
was watching a video of, oh, this is how you install the greenhouse, but it didn't tell you all the other nuances of doors, sidewalls, ventilation, shade cloth, roll up sides, and and I'm a very analytical guy, and so I need to know like some details. Like give me some hard principles, and I've quickly learned like everything is subjective. Like you can do it however you want. Like I'm like, but I don't even know where to start with that. Like, what do you mean roll up sides or ropes or there's just too many options, and I didn't want to learn at an expense of like over engineering this thing for something so simple that I needed. And so like our first one used the ropes, to roll up the sides, and that was great because I didn't invest in a whole bunch of infrastructure that I didn't know if I was going to need or not. And sure enough, well, as the years have gone by, now we've converted all that to everything has a roll up side now because that's just a
And you
necessary
need
for
that.
us. Yeah, exactly. But then it went from that into tools. The tools is where everybody, I think, it's just, especially for men, it's like, oh my goodness, it's like walking into Home Depot, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what could I use? And you watch one commercial or one video and somebody's like, showing all the weeds gone in like 3 minutes by using this new tool. It's like, oh, gotta get that. And so I did a little bit of that without proper research. And so my tool belt is a little overpopulated. We don't use all of them, but those are kind of like the $100 to $200, over purchase things. And I still am finding a place for them, but they're definitely some that are not needed that I'm not using. Those are like the hand tools and things. But then you stumble upon some game changers, infrastructure like the walk-in cooler for us. Again, the roll-up sides, that was huge. Some of the other harvesting tools and things that just really change the way that you farm and are part of your daily farming stuff. Even things like plastic to suffocate the plants out,
Mm-hmm.
landscape fabric, and how to use that to seed and then put the landscape fabric so the rain can come and germinate that evenly. Like that was like when all of those systems started coming into place and investing in that and those types of things, that's when it was like, I'm starting to get it. It's not just me out there grabbing for straws. It's like, okay, I can see, what the next thing is I need. But again, going back to like that first screen, I was like, a lot of times I don't know what I need until I'm right smack in front of it. Like we started growing lettuce successfully, and I was like, I gotta wash this. What am I? So here I
Yeah.
am. I sent him a video, Nick, a video of what I was doing. I grabbed a tote and fabricated some PVC pipe and had a brand new shop vac hooked up backwards. And there I am on a concrete slab, which is now our shed, in the middle of January, washing lettuce, in this redneck rickety, wash station that I just made temporary, but it worked, but you don't think about a lot of the stuff until you're, right in front of it, to the next iteration, if you will, of your progress. So yeah.
So is that still happening?
it,
Or are you getting over that or
yeah, it still happens. I mean, and it probably will never end, but I hope at some point we stabilize and we're at plane and not learning, having so many learning curves. I'm trying to think of a most recent thing that oh well, here was the most recent one. Was our microgreen room was we were growing in the, I don't know if he showed you this, but on it used to be, prior to last month, we were growing all our microgreens in the storm shelter. And so, a little 6x8 storm shelter in the ground.
walking down into?
Yeah, and that thing just had, so I finally had most of the dials figured out in there from a climate control thing. Well, then we moved that, and this is what I've said before too. Anytime I make a change, there's always a ripple effect. There's 10 things that happen and nuances, and you've got to acclimate and pivot and always, scramble. And you expected a 10-minute thing just to be, or a small thing to be 10 minutes. And now you're spending weeks and months trying to work out all the kinks in the new, thing that you've done. And so we migrated into a little grow room. And now that thing has got, I'm like, oh, I need a real dehumidifier now. I need, it's like, so again, I was confronted with a problem that, was right in front of me at the immediate moment. So yeah, it's still happening. That's the short answer is yes, it still happens.
But you also know from experience that you can overcome it
Right.
and go move through it.
Yeah, and that's good. And it can be fun. Those types of things are, that's where you still get the enjoyment out of it, is when you figure it out, or at least where you the strategy to figure it out. It might take you some time to save the money to get what you need to get it done, and then you've got all of the manual efforts in like for our manual efforts before we got the dehumidifier was all right. We got to open up the doors from as soon as we get up until just before the sun sets, and then we had to shut the outside door because now the lights on the microgreens were drawing all the bugs in from the outside. So I had to open up the inside door that went into the garage to get some of that humidity out. And so a lot of that manual stuff to get you through that until you're
But you're moving forward, and
right.
that's very obvious of how much you've done in a short amount of time. Because a lot of farms just get stymied, and maybe that will just like I'll deal with that late. That I've moved it, but it's not working. So
Mhm.
later, I don't have time to work on that now. But it sounds like you're continuing to move into the next. I mean, that's the biggest thing is being able to take action and
Right.
keep going.
Yep. Yeah, and I've seen just a lot of stagnation, I guess, if we use that term in this industry. In I don't know if it's personality, I don't know if it's finance. It's probably a mixture of a bunch of things, because like some could happen to
Mhm.
me, when I
Oh,
leave here today, and it would change
oh
our
yeah, I've
outcasts,
seen that too. Yeah.
and so life happens, but even if life doesn't happen, then you have other ingredients such as maybe finances or um what was I just going to say the a focus change, just something that gets in your way, and all of a sudden you
Hmm.
become your focus gets redirected,
Hmm.
and if that happens, then it just becomes a best effort, and you're just going to kind of be very passive with it, and that's my biggest fear is that it becomes passive.
Now I would over time knowing a lot of new farms that come in and then they kind of go away and you wonder what was it,
Hmm.
and I kind of can categorize those over time. One would be a divorce in the family.
Hmm.
That's a loss. Or another is a parent who's ill and they have to start taking care of them.
Hmm.
And then a newborns,
Yeah.
especially for like women farmers. Young children are really hard to farm and have young children on your
Yeah.
own kind of situation, and of course the financial piece
Right.
of I saw a farm that looked at all the videos and then bought everything. They must have had like a big inheritance or something, and they had this amount of money and they were going to go and build a farm, and
Hmm.
they made so many mistakes because it was quick
Slammed it.
and just
Hmm.
the what they didn't need. They never thought about a market.
Right.
They were only going to do the farm, and it was only 1 year and they went under.
Wow.
I got to go to the sale,
Hmm.
and it was like, there's all those Johnny's tools that I'd like, and they were selling them at a third the cost.
Right.
And there I felt bad that and they were young. They just
Yeah.
got this, like they were passionate about this shiny thing
Yeah.
and went for
It
it.
was guaranteed
So
to work
those
in their
are
mind.
those are
Yeah.
some of the things that you see someone come and go at a market, or
Hmm.
the best is they come and go at a market and then they're doing something with their farm that's better than going to a farmer's market, which would be like a wholesale, or they're just moving
Right.
um, and growing that way. But and I think it's always in the first 3 years that you're going to see it happen. If you get to 5 years, like you said, you're building the infrastructure and
Hmm.
the experience 5 years on.
Right. Yeah, the same statistics I think are in the farm, and
And
that's
any
it's 95% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. And so if you can make it to the year five, I mean, you you have so much experience. Now you're pinpointed. You got all your dials set on what you're set out to do. I mean, there's still life changes can happen, but
Or
you
if
know,
you're just someone like me, I like to start up. I like new
yeah,
things. I like pushing the edge. And here getting into something where 5 years is like maintaining something. And I'm feeling like other people can maintain. I'm going to
right,
start something else where I see there's a gap and move into
yeah,
that. So That's my own, and I know that about myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's very important though to know. It's a self reflection is really important because that's where people will give up too because they either say that's not me or they don't know themselves well enough to know that hey I am capable of doing this to have that confidence in themselves or that they are more of a maintainer and not an initiator. There's all kinds of
Right.
kinds and
Oh
so
yeah.
there I've seen this throughout my life, but there are just the people like my wife is one of these people. Uh, she could just be a bagger at Kroger and just sit there and she just like take in, but she wouldn't want to be the person that's setting up the store, designing all the systems and beginning the store, right? But
Hmm.
she would love just to be the person that
I
you
know my
know
job right here.
yeah, and that's what it takes. So but so if there's a misalignment, with the person starting the farm, that that could pose a problem, especially like for me, where the I tend to lean very much like you. I'm on this project. I'm building it. Okay, now I've done it. Now what? Am I going to be the guy that's going to be maintaining it forever? And I feel like I am right now, but I know that's not my normal tendency. Like I'm going to say, okay, well, let's do the next thing, and it'll probably
Hmm.
still be on the farm and hand over the day to day operations to somebody who's like my wife. She just
Just
she
do it.
that's yep. She thrives off that. She feels accomplished at the end of the day when she has done all the tasks, for the operations of whatever project that is. So all kinds of kinds. What about
So,
the financial piece? Going back to that, I mean, like because I think even for me on the financial side, I looked at this as farming was a high profitability area, right? And so you get the rose colored glasses basically
mm.
of farming, and that's where I think a lot of people drop off because it's like I'm just going to quit my corporate job.
Oh.
I'm going to go farm and everything's my lifestyle's not going to change. But in then 3 years into that because they don't have you know they can't see the next 2 years or where their breakthrough is going to come, and they that's when they toss in the towel. And it's kind of going back to like what you were saying, some of the reasons why people drop out or change seasons or do pivot is one of them is finances. And I think there's an unrealistic expectation, whether it's farmer or any business, again, of what it's going to take to get there. And when you are depleted, you have a knee jerk reaction to say, I'm done with farming or flowers or whatever it is, and move on to the next thing. You know, I don't know. For me, yeah, I had my own eye opening during this, just because it's like, okay, you read all of the statistics. I remember the first one I read was, I think it was Curtis Stone. He was doing a quarter or a half acre, and it says, oh, it's $70,000, and I'm like, all right, and and I even read his book, great book, from for me for some of the stuff I was learning. But I failed. I was delusional in reading that. Like, okay, $70,000 doesn't mean I'm replacing my salary for 70,000. That just means I sold $70,000 worth of produce. That doesn't account my
Mm,
seed
mm-mm,
costs.
mm-mm.
That doesn't, And then Frith Farm, they published theirs. I think I hope I'm not mixing these guys up, but I think they were doing like 150,000. I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wow, $150,000.
Yeah, the
That's some good
market
living.
gardener. So that's his
Yeah,
tagline on his book,
yeah.
$150,000.
But that's not what you're bringing home. That's what the farm's taking the full revenue, and so I would really be curious to see what a mature like our operation. If we would just take our operation fully mature and fully yields where they should be in everything, not building and just really focusing. We've got all of our systems in place. What something that we're capable of generating from revenue, but what does that look like from a profit margin? And that's something I don't know. I don't even know who I would
If
ask
there
on that.
is,
Yeah,
yeah,
is
if
there?
there is that.
So I mean, I've heard the number of you should be able to profit 30%, but I don't know. Does that mean then that like the owner, me, not actually drawing employment, takes home 30% of that 70,000 or 150,000, or am I the main guy on that drawing wage plus I have 30%? So those numbers are really a mystery
Yeah,
to me right now. I
and
have
I
no
don't know
idea.
that. And when I went into farming, I was in public education. Schools
Uh,
and city. I was with a city. So I never handled any money. I wasn't the business piece of me doesn't know much. So I'm like, I'm going into this without even the experience of how to make change at a market. I had to watch a video on how you hold your money so you could make change because I
Wow.
uh, I never dealt with money.
Hmm.
So here I am, um, not being able to even speak to that because I don't think there is answers out there because it's just like people saying, well, how much do you need to retire? Well, it depends on how you want to live.
Yep.
That it's so different for everyone. So how much do I need to make from my farm is going to be, what kind of lifestyle you have, what do you
Mm-hmm.
want to drive, and what do you want to put back into your farm? So it's always just kind of not across the board. This is exactly what the
Yeah.
percentage is, and the way I feel. But most everybody I know has outside work. Um,
Additional income, you're saying?
additional
Yeah.
income for the farm and you see a lot of farmers doing workshops and
Mm-hmm.
tours and agritourism, and there's something about that. What's
Right.
going on?
Yeah. Or YouTube. I mean, that's a big thing too. So all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden people are out farming, and then all of a sudden you see them scale back their farm operations extremely because now they're focused on YouTube, making videos, and that's
Mm-hmm.
totally fine and dandy. But I'm just
We need that.
obviously that's saying to me like, you know, the small amount of revenue that you might get from YouTube is more than your farming. I don't know. I mean, I'm speculating on some of that,
Jeez.
but
I see the videos that first attracted to this being part of the culprit. It's like $100,000 in X amount or on X amount of land or an X amount of time. But it's the same problem with any general clickbaity type of advice on YouTube, right? It's not based on regionality. I mean, this is just the first thing I think about. So what they don't tell you is, but I'm 20 minutes outside of Montreal, which has one of the most banging food scenes in the world. So of course it's possible on a very small footprint to make 100K a year. And why is this $100,000 such an arbitrary number for everybody's success when Connecticut has gigantic land taxing and we're a little bit better off? We don't have state income tax here, but other people do. Well, I'm going to run it under the table. And now you start getting into, well, what's your threshold for creative financing and tax work? What does your wife make? Do you own your home? Are you a trust fund child? Have you scraped yourself from the bottom and you're used to living without, and now all of a sudden it's almost an upgrade because at least you're working for yourself and you're still making the same amount of money, but now you have more freedom. And what's the value of that? Or I'm going to leave my corporate job. I mean, you're a perfect example. You had the McMansion in Fort Worth. Kids were going to private school. You were able to save up enough money to at least come here and have a very long runway for infrastructure while maintaining a high-paying job off farm. Yep. While still on the farm. You have cut your expense on your commute and everything, but everything's cost 10 times more than what you thought it would. Now, are you going to declare bankruptcy next week? Absolutely not, because you're the type of person that hasn't put yourself in that type of situation where it's going to be completely detrimental. Do you take bigger swings than other people? Yes, because you can take that. You can take those chances because you've set yourself up for that. Other people, like I'm a great example of, I take gigantic swings and I either have huge wins or huge losses. And to some degree, it's about balanced out over the course of my entire life. I'm like a George Costanza, if I do everything the opposite, it's all going to work out. But you go into YouTubers. I'm just throwing all this stuff at the both of you, trying to keep it short. But you get people wanting to be the next YouTuber. I have to start a farm, not realizing that the farm is not entirely conducive to shooting content. Oh, and by the way, it takes forever to do this and a whole different set of skills. Just like nobody's asking a farmer to be the perfect grower and the perfect salesman and the perfect marketer and the perfect bookkeeper. Why would you be the perfect grower plus the perfect parent plus the perfect production team? on something that you haven't gotten any training on. So it's how much do you need to run a farm is entirely based on where you are, proximity to market, what your threshold for living is. Some people don't want a new car. Other people do want a new car. For some people, it's an absolute necessity because they have to drive 100 miles to market. You can't do that with a clunker. But if you're only making $20,000 a year, don't buy a $60,000 truck. And I'm no Susie Orman. And I shouldn't be talking to anybody about finances. It's ridiculous. But I have seen the common traps of believing A plus B equals C.
Right.
A lot of that comes from those types of videos that first, at least, you were not directed to the money. That's not why you're in this. But you were shown a window in which you could crawl in and go, I can supplement my income to a good degree. It's taking that information and going, does this actually apply to me? And realizing where they're shooting these videos and how they've set up those farms. Mm-hmm. So it's who's to say what you need. You value your children's education more than a lot of other people I know. You're paying for private schools. That's not cheap. Right. You could probably save, I don't know how much a year going to public school, but that's not what you want. And that you have equated that expenditure to being well worth it. You're not going to sacrifice that over anything else. Yeah. So it's almost a conversation that's impossible to have because every single person, even if they lived in the same town and had the same market and the market was big enough for 4 people and there was only 2 and there was all the work you could possibly have, they're both going to be vastly different. And you have to think about all these things as a farmer, but never take somebody else's situation and try to laminate it over your own.
Yeah, there's far too many variables. I mean, that's at the end of the day. But I think the one thing that you could, if you had the 2 exact farmers in the location, like say even my farm, like what is it capable of producing from a revenue, like just pure revenue? Like if it was, if I had 1.5 acres in this market, I have no idea what I'm capable of doing. And that's the big unknown for me is what is it capable of doing?
Well, yes and no, because not only was it capable of, but Amanda and I had a conversation at lunch, is that what is your threshold for pricing your goods at what you can sell it for? Not what it's worth, not what you can grow, but how are you marketing your stuff? Those 2 farmers are not going to market the same. They're not going to present the same. One is going to grow this better. One's going to grow that better. For who cares what the reason is? It could be variety. It could be this guy's on sandy loam, this guy's on clay. Mm-hmm. It's still not an even playing field. And I was telling Amanda, farmers perpetuate their own feelings and stereotypes and emotions on money to their clients, realizing or not realizing that their clients are in a completely different tax bracket, a completely different motivation. Farmers are inherently go-getters. I'm going to save money. I'm going to do it myself. Why would anybody spend $50 on a bouquet? I just spent $3 on seeds. When the customer never has those thoughts or emotions attached to however they're spending their money, and it's not on us as farmers to judge how people spend their money. If you view your stuff as a luxury item, it's a luxury item, but you have to present it that way, and you have to deliver, you have to show up, and you have to, if this is the type of level of service I'm applying to the crop, you're elevating that to something you could get more for. Versus if you back up the rust bucket to the booth and don't throw up a tablecloth and you only take cash and tobacco is dripping out your lip, you're going to get less.
You didn't wash your lettuce.
Right. So, I mean, even that.
Yeah, there's that many variables even at that level of comparison. They were in the same climates or same zone, even in the same location.
Let's take a local example. You can't swing a dead cat around here without hitting a hamburger joint. Mm. You can go in this town and buy a $15 hamburger, and you can buy a $1 hamburger. And all of them have their place. And at any one given time on lunch, you can drive by and they're all busy, which means from $1 to $2 to $6, $8, $10, $15, everybody in town has a different threshold for what they're going to spend, where they're going to eat it, who they're going to eat it with, what the sides are going to be. I like this fry better than this fry. So even that that little thing that everybody can equate to and understand has a place. I don't want a $1 hamburger. That's some great F meat. I don't know. That's all I have to say about that. But I think it's unfair to say who and how you can or cannot make a living in farming because of all and probably 5 million other variables.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of that you don't have any control over.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier too, is define what are you trying to do? Is this something that you're just doing passively, passive income, or something that you're, that meaning you're like kind of like me right now. I'm paying people to do this, for me. That's not my ultimate goal, but if that's your goal, or if your goal is to live off of it, like and provide income for you, like it's your own thing, or are you trying to build this thing up so it's fully automated? You're building a machine, a commercialized machine, like those are things you just really got to think about, I think. And I would venture to guess that most people don't think that.
Well, and you cannot even define automated. Automated for a millennialist that has come into agriculture for their love of robots versus somebody that just doesn't want to turn on their water hose, that's a big difference. Yeah. And that's going to run the gamut. In this industry right now, the term automation could mean a billion different things. And most of it's completely unproven at this point. But you have people pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into tech companies, agriculture tech companies, that we're going to have a bunch of losses. And instead of investing that money into something more in the middle, so we have this guy over here with a wire hoe, we have this guy over here with a $10 million robot. Mm-hmm. Where the hell's the middle ground that we can actually invest in to see some real progress in the industry versus, well, this is where we're going to be in 200 years or in the next 100 years. I don't give a shit about that right now. I want to see what's going to happen in the next 20 years because we've made smarter investments with agricultural farms that have been, agricultural farms, that's double, but people that have been in this for a long time and actually worked in agriculture that has ideas, that don't know manufacturing, that don't know the patent process, that don't know how to go to the next level, but we're investing in apps.
5 minutes to 2.
Oh yeah.
You take her for her time.
I was going to get on the road here.
Yeah.
Go back to Dallas.
Well, certainly a pleasure. Hopefully see you soon. And I'd truly, sincerely love for you to come out when we're there and we can chat and let my wife, glean from some of your wisdom and experience. So it's been great chatting with you here.
I'm glad that I had the chance to do that, and I don't get out here very often, but my son lives here in Paris, so I can go and visit him and of course hang out with Nick, and I will be back and we'll do that.
Sounds
I
good.
enjoyed today.
Thank you.
Peace and champagne for
Yay!